Kinks and Beats Daily. I'm your host, Tony Fry. Thank you for joining us today. On this day, January 29th, 1964, the Beatles take a break during a French tour to record their only sessions outside of the United Kingdom. And we talked about this on yesterday's podcast. Just by accident, the song came up at an appropriate time. But the purpose of this recording session was to record German lyrics to She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And the sessions went so smoothly that there was a second session scheduled that they ended up canceling. And the band still had time in this first session to record 4 takes of Paul's new song, Can't Buy Me Love. Now, the band had originally wanted to play hooky off of this session. And after an hour goes by, George Martin says, where are the lads, as he was wont to say, and finds out that they're not coming in. They're blowing off this session, and they hadn't shown that kind of disrespect to George Martin before. So in a rage, he goes down to the hotel and basically drags him out of the hotel into the studio to record these songs. Now, the reason for it was because they were told by German record companies that they wouldn't be able to sell large quantities of singles in Germany unless they were in German. And seeing as how these are the only 2 songs they did and in German, and they had plenty of success in Germany, that was obviously incorrect. But George Martin would later say that they were right to not want to do it, but they were obviously wrong to play hooky. So that was on this day in 1964. A little bit of housekeeping. Thank you to those who are contributing to this podcast to keep us ad-free. We have a thing on Hero Habit. If you go into the store section, or I think it's on the podcast page as well. But if you go in the store, you'll see podcast support for $4 a month, and you can cancel at any time for 20 cents an episode. You can help us offset the cost of producing this podcast and keep it ad-free. That's all we're asking. There will be some bonus content that will go out to subscribers first. I will put it out to everyone eventually, but subscribers will get a sneak peek, including an upcoming episode about your Mars picks. So if you haven't submitted a voicemail yet, give me a call at 925-494-1739. Which Kinks or Beatles album would you take as your sole source of musical entertainment if you were being sent to Mars for a year? All right, this is the only thing you can listen to while you're trapped up there. Which one do you pick and why? Call me at 925-494-1739. And of course, you can email me kinksandbeats@herohabit.com. And if you aren't interested in doing a $4 subscription contribution, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. All right. Today we're talking about Dandy, which was a Kinks song released on October 28th, 1966 on the album Face to Face. And it was released as a single on November 18th, 1966, backed with Party Line, which was the opening track to Face to Face. Now, the single was not released in America or the UK, but it was a huge hit throughout Europe, top 5 in several countries. And so you see this song appear on a lot of greatest hits compilations for the Kinks, even though it wasn't a hit in their 2 biggest markets, but it was a hit all over Europe. Herman's Hermits, though, would have a hit with it in America. Their version of the song, which actually came out first a couple months before the Kinks version, was a top 5 hit in America. And if you go listen to it, it is something. Now, I'm not a huge Herman's Hermits guy. I have not delved deeper than the hits that I'd heard on oldie stations and stuff. But if there's any confusion between whether the Kinks were a rock band or a pop band, listen to Herman's Hermits version of this exact same song, which you could consider one of the Kinks' less rock and roll songs from the 60s. This is kind of a music hall, pub sing-along kind of song. But Ray's delivery of the lyrics and his vocal styling on this are distinctly more rock and roll than Peter Noon's, who sang it for Herman's Hermits. I have a bit of a cold, so I'm not going to be doing any singing on today's podcast, which is, maybe a good thing for some of you who don't like my voice. But Peter Noon does a very clean dandy, dandy. He just hits the notes. All right, I guess I will do a little singing. He just hits the notes. Very clean, very precise, very accurate. Where you've got Ray doing a dandy, dandy, right? He's doing a little bit more, he's a little bit looser with it. And then when he gets to the lower end of his range, especially at the end when he's singing "You're all right," he's got that throaty tone that's definitely a rock singer doing a less than rock and roll song. Where there's none of that in the Herman's Hermits version. It's a very lush arrangement. There's a string section. He's very precise. There is no edge to it at all. But the Kinks, they've always got a little edge. Even at their least edgy, they've got a little bit of edge to them. Harmonically, so the cool thing about this song, I'm not going to get too much into the harmonics. It's not much going on. For the most part, it's just a D chord. And then he goes to the 4 to a E minor chord. So a 2. And then he's doing, that when he's on that 4, G chord, then he does a F sharp in the bass. We all know Ray likes his descending bass lines, but that takes us to the E minor, which is the 2 chord in D. So we're steeped in D. So that's it. That's the verse. There is no chorus per se. There's a refrain, but there's no chorus. And then when he gets to the bridge, he goes to F sharp, which is kind of a weird move, but it works because F sharp is the 3 in the key of D. You don't often go to the 3, and then he's making it major. But he's just doing like 1 to 4. Then he goes up to A, 1 to 4. And then he backpedals using chromatic descending bassline. Back to D major. So that's it. That's the harmonic structure in a nutshell. What's cool, though, is that the way it's constructed, and this kind of is where you get that pub feel, is that he ends each verse with the dandy, dandy, which is really the first line of the next verse. So every verse is connected to the next with this repeated refrain, which acts like the chorus. If you were to go, what's the chorus of this song? It'd be dandy, dandy, right? That's it. Just the 2 words. But it's cool because he ends, oh, they long for dandy, dandy. So the verse technically ends, I guess, on oh, they long for, and he leaves it hanging and then starts. It's a clever thing to do lyrically, and you do see it in stuff like barroom music and things like that, music hall, stuff that was intended for people to sing along to. The song, there are 2 different dates recorded at Pi Studios in London, that on which we can agree. Depending on which source you pull from the same author, this was either recorded between April and June 1966 or January 1966. Face to Face, I think we've talked about this before, was pieced together from various sessions. They didn't sit down and do a 2-month session for just recording this album. They were putting together songs whenever they had a chance to duck into the studio and put together a song. And then those were all compiled into Face to Face, which is a great album. And it was part of their live set for a few years. If you get the Kinks or the Live Kinks LP, which is also known as Live at Kelvin Hall, in August 1967, it's on that one. And I got a turntable for Christmas, and I decided that I was going to, in honor of this podcast and to keep my collectible mind kind of in check, I was going to focus on just getting vinyl of the Kinks and the Beatles that was from the time. So I don't want, the 2019 remaster or whatever yet. I'll get it eventually. But I'm going through used bins and consignment shops and stuff like that, looking for vinyl from the period. And on the first weekend I go out shopping, I find, what did I get? I think I got at one consignment shop, I got an old version of Arthur and this Kinks Live LP. And I'd never heard the Kinks Live LP. So I put it on the turntable first. The sound recording is tough to listen to. The crowd noise is just deafening. But the band sounds great. And their version of Dandy sounds cool. And this is not one of my favorite Kinks songs, but it sounds cool on that album. So if you can track down either Kelvin Hall or the Kinks, the Live Kinks, it's worth listening to. And then also listen to their version of Sunny Afternoon, because that one is fantastic. So that's Dandy. Ray says it was written kind of about him and kind of about Dave, and he says it's a more serious song than it superficially seems, because, the character of Dandy is kind of swarthy and disgusting, but also kind of admired in this. And then it's kind of about, what are you going to do when you get old and look back at this? You have to get your life in check and stop, as Ray said, flitting around from girl to girl. So that's Dandy. Go check it out on Face to Face. It is on our Spotify playlist if you visit herohabit.com and hit the podcast button at the top of the page. You will find the Kinks and Beats daily page. It's got the Spotify playlist. It's got the directory that's by discography with links to all the episodes we've recorded. As well as links to all the places you can subscribe to the podcast and do the $4 monthly contribution and read articles that have been written on the site about both bands. So go to herohabit.com for all of that. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, and don't forget to tell everybody you know about this podcast. Take care. This podcast is presented by the Hero Habit Podcast Network. Swing by herohabit.com today to comment on this episode and poke around our growing database of sports and pop culture news, reviews, and collectibles. Herohabit.com. Collect your heroes.